If you haven't written a memoir yourself, just imagine going to therapy to discuss your deepest trauma every single morning for a year. Only there's no actual therapist there to help you process what you're sharing about yourself. I do have an amazing therapist, thank God, but with my sessions only happening once or twice a week, it felt like swallowing a couple of Advil after being run over daily by a Mack truck. Coming out very publicly about my HIV-positive status, surviving sexual abuse, and overcoming hardcore drug use was a healing yet harrowing experience. Luckily, I also had many joyful memories to write about. I hoped sharing my story would help other people going through similar hardships, and that helped balance out the nerve-wracking and painful parts. Still, by the time the final draft was completed and on its way to the printer, all I could think was, that was like wearing the skinniest stiletto heels ever, but I just got home and now I can take them off. The hard part is over. Don't get me wrong. The book was something I hadn't even dared dream was possible. And I'm still overwhelmed with gratitude that my publisher and editor believed in me and felt that I had a story worth telling. However, after over a year of diligently laboring in love, writing my story the way I wanted it to be told, hoping it would inspire people or help them in their healing journey, I was ready to move forward. Once the book came out, I learned quickly that it's hard to move forward when you're constantly being dragged back into the past. Promoting it meant reliving the darker moments of my life all over again, and again, and again. Each time I did another interview, I was pulled right back into everything I'd gone through, always in front of a different stranger, and every one of them with their own agenda and a series of probing questions about times in my life that I thought I'd made peace with. As more and more of these interviews piled up, I began to wonder if I actually had. I also didn't anticipate how readers still coming to terms with their HIV status would suddenly see me as a source of strength. This was humbling, but also added whole new layers of pressure and doubt. Could I really be that person for them? Answering questions from people I'd never met, helping them find doctors, and not quite knowing how the HIV safety net worked in whatever state or sometimes country they were in often made me feel useless about the best way to guide them. And that wasn't all. Survivors who were still processing their own sexual abuse now viewed me as a confidant with whom they could share their stories. It gave me a whole new level of empathy, and I can't overstate how honored I am whenever someone feels safe enough with me to discuss their pain. But sometimes, having an incredibly intense and intimate conversation and taking on that energy made it hard to turn on a dime when I had to interact with someone from the press immediately afterwards and suddenly become my giggly, happy JVN self. I'm not trying to complain or be an ungrateful nightmare. I just thought writing the book would be the most challenging part. But that was short-sighted of me, because for folks who read my story and found that it resonated with them, obviously the book coming out would only be the beginning. And for those who read or heard about my book but don't relate to me, well, hey, call me an optimist, but I definitely didn't expect all the rage-inducing transphobic, homophobic, HIV-stigmatizing ignorance that has been hurled my way. And one of the hardest parts was at the very beginning. Over the Top came out on September 24th, 2019, and in the weeks leading up to my publication date, I was a nervous wreck. That's pretty normal for any debut author. And luckily, I had a ton of work on my plate to distract me. I was in the middle of my first international comedy tour, much more about that later, and had the Creative Arts Emmys to look forward to. Queer Eye had been nominated for 6 of them, and the cast and crew were excitedly preparing for the ceremony. I even had a nomination of my own for Game of Thrones for Outstanding Short-Form Variety Series. About a month before the book's release, I landed my first big sit-down interview about it with a reporter from an important newspaper. He'd scheduled a breakfast date at a little corner cafe just a few blocks from my apartment in New York City. And walking there that morning, I felt just like Carrie Bradshaw in the opening credits of Sex and the City, except with heartburn and a deep fear that I was about to diarrhea my tutu all over the sidewalk. This would be the first time I'd spoken about the book to anyone outside my immediate circle of friends and family, and I was dying to know what the journalist thought of the project I'd poured so much of myself into. I arrived at the cafe, introduced myself to the writer, and soon after we were seated, he asked, "True or false? Your book covers..."